I was thinking back 38 years ago. I remember when I took my RD exam and I passed, and I said, I am going to be a clinical dietitian, total parental nutrition, tube feeding. I was really into that. I wanted to dial into that. Well, that never happened. 28 years later, I finally got the opportunity to work as a clinical dietitian at Wardenberg. I've had a lot of detours and glitches along the way, some comfortable, some not. But overall, I think it's got me in place of where I'm supposed to be. And I'm so fortunate right now to be at CU Boulder as a research dietitian. And also I had the opportunity, I said, to work at Wardenberg as a clinical dietitian. Go to the next slide here. For some reason, it's not allowing me to go to the next slide. There we go. Thinking about my first job. So it wasn't a clinical dietitian. I ended up being a food scientist, worked for International Dairy Queen in research and development. I got paid to eat soft serve for 3 years. It was phenomenal. It was fun. But that clinical dietitian didn't happen, and this did. 23 years later, I landed at the Clinical Translational Research Center. If you're not familiar, we're here on campus. You can volunteer, be one of our subjects. We do phenomenal research. We're a satellite of the Denver CTRC down in Anschutz. They're doing incredible work. We have an exercise physiologist, we have a physician, we have nurses, a dietitian. And so check out our website. We're located in Romley Hall, right by the rec center. If you want to be a volunteer, it's fantastic, helping out with human research, answering questions. You might get some nutrition information from me. You might be able to get a bone scan and find out bone mineral density, VO2 max, oxygen consumption to see where your fitness is, blood draws. So if you have a chance, check out the CTRC. Just to tell you a little bit about the services at Wardenberg, very impressed what they have and what they offer for students on campus here. The head dietitian is Stephanie Snell, and she provides nutrition counseling for students. Those that have the gold insurance, they have unlimited access to getting nutrition care from a dietitian. Was awesome. And if they want to pay out of pocket, they can see a dietitian on campus. They can see Stephanie. Other services that are offered here on campus, nutrition resources, you know the food service. The students have great access as well as faculty and staff. Lisa Whalen is the dietitian that does the food service. If you've been to Williams Village or C4C, UMC, phenomenal. What she did during COVID, what we all did through COVID, how we navigated. She did a great job in being able to keep us fueling on campus when we were there. We have nutrition course, Introduction to Nutrition class here through Integrative Physiology. Dr. Nicole Staub and Dr. Donna Reed, they instruct courses, Introduction to Nutrition. They get 1,000 students that enroll. So students can take a class here on campus. They can do it online, they can do it on campus, or it's in the residency hall. And then there's the Clinical Nutrition Center, which I work at. And also the Rec Center is an awesome place. We collaborate with them. If the student wants to see a dietitian, they get 2 free nutrition consults. So we definitely, as dietitians, instructions have a presence here on campus. So as I begin my talk, I just wanted to say the word relationship and just think of how much we navigate throughout the day, how many encounters we have. Some of them are good. Some of them are like, I want to avoid that encounter. And particularly during COVID, thinking about how much things changed for us. I definitely know hunger, connection was one thing that popped up a lot with my neighbors and with my colleagues. And so for me as a dietitian, I want to talk about the relationship of food. And when I worked with the students, it was such a pleasure to work at Wardenberg and to connect with the students and to really get an idea how they fuel themselves, physically and emotionally. And some of those conversations were very quick, very healthy, normal relationship with food. Other relationships were more complicated and layered. And as a dietitian, for me, it was important to provide a safe place to have that conversation. And sometimes that conversation of their relationship with food wouldn't happen until maybe the 12th time that I saw them, maybe 3 months. It takes a while. Food can be loaded, and the relationship can be tested and challenged and compromised. And working at Wardenberg, which was awesome, is I had the support of the physicians, with the eating disorder team, with the CAPS therapists, with physical therapy. You know, when a student has an injury, it can change their relationship with food. If they're an athlete or what they love to do, they can't move their body, they feel themselves differently. Working with health promotions, community resources on campus, the rec center, having that available and giving that support to that student, but allowing that student to get to a place where they can drop and share that story. And that would help me also, those that I collaborated. I'm not a therapist. It's so great to have that open conversation with a therapist to make sure we were on a team and helping this individual look at their relationship and mend it and normalize it. So before I kind of dive into that, I just want to talk about 7 types of hunger. So I did this great class with a therapist, 7 sessions. Each session we talked about the different types of hunger. And as we go along, feel free to put something in the chat, and Erin, you can shout out to me, because I also want you to participate if you feel comfortable, because I think it's important to have that dialogue. I don't want to go through each slide, this, and that. I want to kind of be open and have a dialogue with all of you as well. So the first one I want to bring up is hunger. Eye hunger. Our eyes can override. We can be full physically, but sometimes the eye just says, I want that sandwich. Or you're out to dinner and you look to the side and you're like, oh my goodness, there's the dessert tray. I really want that slice of cheesecake with a little bit of chocolate and raspberry. So there's that eye hunger side that drives us to kind of eat. Oh, the nose. Smell, even though you're full or whatever, you just dial in, you're like, boy, I could go for some French fries. Or you're in the mall and you're shopping and the food court, or you go by the bakery, you smell. I know for me, the grilling season is going to be on board. I feel like I should load my knapsack up, put a bottle of wine in, some salsa, some herbal tea, my compost plates, a bowl, silverware. Herbal tea, did I say, by bowls? But anyway, I would go to my neighbors, and if they're grilling, I would just kind of knock and say, hey, do you mind if I join? I'll give you $20. I know you like red wine. Put me in the corner here. So smells really can bring us in and want to eat. I'm just shout this out to you guys. Is there any kind of particular smell that's just like, I'll put something in chat. That was a loud smell, excuse me, with my nose.
Yes, we have a comment from Nicole. An Indian restaurant cannot resist those aromas.
I'm with you on that. I love Indian, those spices. Yes.
Lori says baked goods. Laura says everything you mentioned. Kelly says baking bread. Cookies are coming in from Jenny. I have to say it's French fries for me. Bernadette says hatch chilies.
Nice. Then there's that taste or that texture that we like. As I say, a party in our mouth. It's just like, boy, I have a friend when she goes to an Italian restaurant. Watch out, pesto bread and red wine. She just loves that hit with the pesto. Anybody here have kind of that mouth hunger that you crave sometimes? Then there's the stomach hunger. That's key, because when our blood sugar drops, it's like, wow, I've got to eat now. What does it feel like for you all when you know things have shifted and you are really hungry? How are you cognitively and physically? What kind of goes on for you? I don't think real well. I don't make the best. What was that?
We have short-tempered, a little crabby, shaky. I know I get hangry. Yep, there's Meredith.
Yes.
Angry too.
Yeah, it's like, get out of my way. I need food now, or I can't make a decision. Or if you do make a decision, you might regret it because you know it's time to eat.
Headachy came through. Tummy makes noise as well.
Exactly.
Muzzy-headed. Ellie.
Then there's that cellular, and that's really key because sometimes we kind of ignore that because someone says, oh, sodium cravings, I'm not supposed to have blood pressure. I shouldn't do this, or I shouldn't do. The body is telling you that, hey, it's time. If you've been out and about and you're sweating, you're like, boy, I really do need some chips. I need something salty. I'm going to have salsa right now and chips. Or if there's magnesium, sometimes chocolate, that is a key that, hey, it's time to have chocolate. So cellular is really important to listen to because your body is telling you. And then there's a time to eat. Okay. It is time to eat. And then is it really time to eat? Not so much. We're clocked in. We have been told to have breakfast, lunch, and dinner. When I worked with the students, I tried not to use breakfast, lunch, and dinner, try not to use time. I would just ask, what is the first time that you may eat? Might have been 2 o'clock, might have been 7 o'clock, and finding out when and why they ate. And so I didn't really want it to get into, oh, you didn't have breakfast. Oh, you didn't. I want to get a gauge of when they ate, but all of us, we have sometimes that clock. It's time to eat, but we may not be hungry. Or it's 10 o'clock and you ate at 8 o'clock, but you're hungry in the morning. Go ahead, have something to eat. It's okay not to be so tied into time. And then that heart hunger, think about those comfort foods. Why are they coming in? That's kind of a reason for hunger. So does anybody have any heart hunger that they know that they kind of connect with, that kind of calms them or brings that kind of comfort?
I have stress eating. And Jenny says mac and cheese. Shelley has chocolate. We've seen a lot of chocolate carbs, mom's recipes, the tater tot hot dish. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so there is that kind of heart hunger, and to kind of be aware of that. So what you might be missing. So let's just kind of go over some of the basics here, but emotional hunger versus physiological. So when I think about fueling, I want to get a sense of where that student's coming from and why they're hungry and what they're hungry for. So when we think about emotional hunger, that can be pretty quick. That can be a trigger. That's like, I am going to eat right now. Physical hunger is more of a gradual onset. It's really what's on your mind, what has surfaced, what has triggered kind of that emotion for you to go to that comfort food or not comfort food, or just to eat to smooth things over. Then the physical is being really, the stomach, the blood sugar, things are dropping, physiologically what's going on. And with emotional hunger, there's usually a specific food, taste, or texture. You kind of dial into that. That's something with the student, I'll find out what's kind of considered safe foods and not safe foods. What are their trigger foods and why are they drawn to that particular food? And when you have that physical, that's more options, more palatable foods. You're not kind of diving into, as someone said, the carbs, the chocolate, the salt, crunchy stuff. And with emotional, sometimes it's hard to satisfy. You kind of get into that unconscious eating. You get into that binge. And with physical hunger, you have that sense of, hey, I'm full, I'm good, and I can stop eating. And we'll talk about triggers in a little bit. What are those triggers? And really dialing in to kind of get an understanding for that. And guilt, people think, oh, I felt guilty because I had this, and that. And I tell people guilt is that's not an ingredient. We can work with that. That's where a lot of times, this is where the therapist really kind of helps me when we work with the student. And with physical hunger, you're not feeling bad. So let's talk a little bit. Let me just put all these up. So when we think about honoring our hunger, just think about hunger. We think of infancy. We're a baby. Boy, we're not talking, but we really let mom or dad know when we're hungry. We cry. We have that biological, I am ready physically to eat. One thing that's important with students is letting them know they've got to meet their energy needs. Okay, if we are going to classes and as faculty and staff as well, going to our jobs, as we navigate throughout the day with all the different relationships that we have, we need to stay fueled. We need to have the appropriate amount of energy. So cognitively and physically, we can do what we need to do. And that can kind of hopefully trigger. Watch out for those triggers that we have that we tend to overeat, or we may binge or begin to have this repetition of a change in behavior. And once you've reached that moment of excess hunger, all intentions and moderate conscious eatings, they can flee away. They're irrelevant. You have to be careful with that. So learning to honor that biological signal and trust, working with trusting your body, because there is a time where that relationship does change and you not be able to get those biological signals, or you might not be able to trust yourself with food. So going back to kind of that, not infancy stage, but honoring that part of that biological, physiological part of yourself. So why do we silence hunger? Why are there times that we silence hunger? Why does that happen? There's a lot of multifactorial kind of things, but as we know, stress is key. You know, we're clocked with the students, you know, talking with them sometimes. They would have their coffee, their chai, and have their granola bar and go to class, put it in drive from one class to the next class, and they may not eat until 2 o'clock. And I'm like, my gosh, you've been running on fumes. You have been running on fumes. So learning to kind of recognize that stress. How do we make sure that we're not silencing things? Or sometimes we open that up where we override and we eat more than we should. So stress and chaos in our schedules. Diet, I really don't like the word. It's there, it's in our culture, we recognize it. Not to say that one can't lose weight or have to gain weight, whatever, but sometimes the external messages that we get from TV, from social media, it's incredible. And I don't know sometimes how a lot of us filter that out. And nutrition and the diets you should go on and do this and do your exercise. So it's like, I shouldn't eat because I'm on this diet and it tells me that I can't eat until this time, or I can't eat this food, and there's this restriction. Our body is saying, I'm hungry, but you silence it. So really working with the students to learn how to filter some of that information that comes in, because that's hard. That is really, really hard. And don't get me wrong, I think there is a place for structure. I think sometimes people need kind of structure to help them, particularly in weight loss. But when it shuts down that hunger, then I'm concerned about that. And there's trauma, as I said, to be able to have a student trust and to be able to drop to a place, and this is emotional, to share their trauma with you. The stories I heard, you understand why someone has shut down. And again, it's key to work with that therapist. And the courage it took for that student to share that story with me is huge. That allows me to get into a space and honor where they're at. And just that emotional part, again, with the trauma or with stress, sometimes we just numb ourselves. And there is this control that comes into when life is chaotic. You control things. And it's interesting how food is one thing individuals will do to control and put that calmness in their life. And so this is a short version of the hunger tree, but those are the kind of things sometimes we need, you know, to get back to that part where we can normalize our relationship with our food if things have shifted for us. So learning how to feel fullness, you would think that would be a common thing and easy, but we lose that sometimes when there's that disconnect and listening to those signals of the body. Our body is so incredible. What a museum, an art place we are. You think about what our body does for us throughout the day, and it's fairly loud and clear. And there's a lot of times we'll say, that's just minor. That's just minor. And before you know, something that's acute now has become chronic. So really key listening to your body, observe the signs, learning to feel comfortable and learning to say, okay, I'm done eating. I'm going into that overeating and binge. And learning how to pause. That's huge. We're on the go. We got things to do. I don't have time to pause. But pause is key because that allows you to drop to a place, kind of check in. Where am I at? Seeing where your current fullness is. So working with a student, if they're having a hard time, dialing in, where am I at? And honoring that. So if you look at the hunger scale, obviously 0 is you're really, really hungry. You don't want to get to that spot because when you are, your chances of overeating and binging are going to increase. And you're compromising your body. You're running on fumes. Now, there's sometimes you can't help it. It just happens. But if it's happening more often than not, I'm concerned about that. So learning to get to that place of the neutral place, I say between 4 and 6, and feeling that comfort. And then, when you've met 10, that painful, like, oh, I overdid it. Just recognizing is key. And this isn't about, oh, you got to 10, you really did bad. No, you got to 10, you got to feel what it's like. That's okay. To me, it's getting an understanding of where that's at and getting a sense. And making peace with food is huge. And that takes time. Just pop these up because it's a little easier about. Because you lose that trust sometimes. That relation has been compromised, and there's a lot of things that may have changed over time for a person. And be giving yourself permission is huge. If you've been in this world where that hunger silence or you've had restriction, it's like, I shouldn't. I can't do that. That's not part of it. I should. Oh, go ahead. Bring that in. But again, working with that student, you really have to understand why that permission has been denied for a certain amount of time and bringing that in comfortably. But permission is huge. It's okay. It's okay. As I say, M&Ms to me are a multivitamin. Don't ever take M&Ms out of my life. I love them. Now, I don't eat them all day long, but I enjoy them. It's something I enjoy. So to not lead to those uncomfortable cravings and get into that binge and to thinking about that last supper. This is the last time I can have it because I'm going to start my diet. All foods fit, and learning how to have a place for those and enjoy them. So talking about normalizing that eating, what does that look for that person? How do we begin to normalize that for them? I'm going to go back just a little bit here. One thing that when someone has recognized that they've overate or they've binged and trying to change that relationship and normalizing it. I remember some students would come in and said, binge 3 times this week. I wasn't successful. And time before they had binged 5 times. So I'm like, well, it was 3 times this week. Tell me about it. And some of them would say, well, it was this. And I said, wow, it sounded like you paused. You kind of recognize that conflict with your roommate sometimes triggers this, and you don't feel comfortable with your body. You don't feel comfortable for who you are because this relationship with this friend, and so you binged. But you paused and you recognized that conflict or that uncomfortable situation. Kudos to you. Fantastic. So learning to say that, hey, you recognized it, but you binged. That's all right. Or you may have overate. So normalizing doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. So just to shift for a second here, I just wanted to kind of bring in, so we have this emotional component, but we also have to recognize there is a physiological component of why someone's relationship may change. And so working with the MDs and the eating disorder team, we can look at some physiological things. I'm throwing this in there because I think it's phenomenal. I know Dr. Wright here on campus is doing some good work with sleep, and he's also collaborating with Anschutz. And we're learning a lot about these two hormones, ghrelin and leptin, and how they regulate food. So before eating, ghrelin is kicked in, it's in GI, and leptin is low. But after eating, there's this shift and that change. So that is closely related to hunger. So I think sometimes we also have to look at lab values. So I want to call in medical teams so I get a sense of maybe there is something going on. Not to say we measure leptin and ghrelin, we don't at the Wardenberg, but it's interesting research that I just wanted to put out there to kind of let you know at the CTRC, I get exposed to some of this interesting research that's being done. And what's interesting, what we have found is, just moving something around so I can see this, but the ghrelin, as I said, it's made in the stomach, it sends a signal, but we have found with sleep is huge of what changes, and that changes in the level, and ghrelin and leptin make a big difference. And it can actually change how much we're eating and if we're overeating. So there's some insight that we're finding from research physiologically what's going on. So shifting gears a little bit to emotions on that part, to realize how many emotions we encounter, and tapping in to where that student is. And again, my therapist, working with the therapist, is key with this. And I'm just going to pop out grief for a second, because there's a story that I had, or I shared with a story with a student who had food sensitivities and couldn't eat the foods that she loved and really, really enjoyed. And it's changed her relationship. And so we dropped to a place and I said, this is your loss. This is a grief. This has changed. And so her relationship of what she could changed. And I allowed her to take time to realize that that was a loss and a grief. So keying into sometimes our losses with our relationship, that we need to grieve because things have changed for us. I'm going to move things just because on my end things block up. And Erin, do you mind reading this? Because I can't, it's blocking out part of my screen. So I'm going to put you on. Yes. This is just about emotions. I love this. And I know you all can read it. And I'm going to trust Erin to read this for me because I can't get the whole slide. So go for it.
We must honor emotions. They are formed for a purpose. Through temptation to revise the validity of our feelings will come upon us when the moment has passed. Truth is embodied in that moment, and we must seek to understand. Instead of tucking away what we felt or dismissing it as something of less value than rational analysis, do not emotions have as much right to life as logic? Do they not provide the color to our white and black existence?
Thank you very much. So I just think that was so empowering when I came across that. That's key, is that fueling part of how emotions play in to how we feed and fuel ourselves. And so working with students, it's key as a dietitian. And as a dietitian, we ask a lot of questions because we need information. It's not always black and white. So keying into symptoms and finding out that, wow, this person has sleep disturbance, their appetite has changed, there's diarrhea, there's constipation. So what the stress and anxiety that is going on, that can really change their relationship with food and how they feel themselves. Stress can be kind of here and there, but anxiety can become very chronic and can be a long term. So really keying into that student, what's going on. And I think about the students, the last 3 years of what they have gone through with COVID and things has been a hardship, a lot. And so I just want to bring up kind of another part of research of understanding the secondary brain. Our stomach is key because it can make neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters are wonderful communicators. Serotonin is made in our gut. Serotonin is that neurotransmitter that calms us. Dopamine gives that ability to key in and to focus. And so if someone is not fueling themselves, not having that gut microbiome, that can compromise their anxiety and their stress level. So working with a student to help them really get their gut in place and fuel their stomach, can they make those neurotransmitters? And you can see with the gut microbiome in the last 10 years, there's been so much good research. Denver is doing phenomenal work, as well as Ken Wright. He's popped into doing some gut microbiome. Dr. Seals just finished a fabulous study looking at the Western diet, how that can change the gut microbiome and the cardiovascular. So we got some good research going on here with CU, Anschutz, and Boulder. But you can see how key what your gut does for you and the connection with the brain and the gut. And so really dialing into someone's stress and anxiety is key, that we can help them, fueling them and changing the gut microbiome. So maybe that can help with their anxiety, bring in that serotonin and dopamine. And so we get into the emotional part, the need to calm, to be careful with the word control. Control can be helpful in some respects, and sometimes it can lead to very restrict, very rigid kind of relationship with food. But we are going to have uncomfortable feelings. The fear, there might be a time where we've got that happiness that kind of brings out, they're sad, they're anger. So recognizing of what's going on, why there is this loss in control, and finding ways, sitting with that student in ways in which they can comfort, nurture, distract. I remember I had a gal, she just said, this is hard. At nighttime, I don't know what to do. I'm burnt out. I don't want to study. I'm not hanging out with my friends. And she loves to shop on Amazon. Now, she has a limited budget, but I said, get on Amazon. Don't buy anything. Just shop. And so she just shopped. She's like, oh, this is so cool. That's cool. That's cool. But allowed her to kind of have this distraction of not going in and eating. Another gal was art. She liked to draw and she loved anatomy. She's taking this great anatomy physiology. So for her to kind of get into this drawing and coloring her book, it was really a great distraction. So finding those distractions that can kind of pull you out of that mindset where you're triggered and you go towards food. And, as students, when they come to campus, dealing with anxiety, loneliness, boredom, anger, and ourselves, recognizing what's going on in our lives, our job here at CU, what's happening at home, knowing what those triggers are, and realizing that food won't solve the problem. Taking time to deal with the emotion. So when we think about, I call it the emotional mirror. We think about a mirror, we go in and we take a look at ourselves physically, but to go into that emotional time in that mirror to recognize what's going on, and it's huge, it's hard. Students are like, I don't want to deal with it, I got enough going on. But to me, I think it's key that allows us to recognize what's going on and to honor that. And if we are having a disconnect with our relationship with food and how we're fueling ourselves, I think it is tapping into that emotion and really see what's going on. So the continuum of emotions, the sensory gratification, the comfort, the distraction, cessation, and punishment, that's a hard word. Working with students, I would say, I understand when we haven't accomplished or met a goal or haven't done this right or what have you. And there's times that we put on the gloves and take the gloves off, be soft with yourself. And meeting your needs for kindness. What does that look like? And I'm going to go back to COVID. I think COVID was really a time that opened up a lot for all of us. When you think about it, we were all in the boat, per se. I'd never experienced anything like this where it was so globally, but we all had our own different storm that was going on for us. And I really noticed hunger, as I mentioned early on, for connection, and a lot of things popped up. My hunger tree for myself, my colleagues, for my neighbors, but kindness for ourselves. Kind of moving on a little bit, realizing, going to kind of bring in a little bit of body image because that plays a role in our relationship, and realizing there's a blueprint, who we are. Sometimes we can't change. And so part of my as a dietitian was to work with the students. And I love this from Real Gorgeous, The Truth About Body and Beauty by Kat's Cookie. That percent of me, 3 parts of dad, dash of mom, 2 shakes of grandma, 10 mils of Aunt Judy. I just love this picture. To me, what's just be free range, what's normal, what's okay. So I found that's a picture. So thinking about Andre Agassi, if you remember him, the tennis professional who married Steffi Graf, the German tennis player. I remember he had this commercial, it just irritated me because it was all about image. And he definitely was image and selling this camera. And I made this slide because image is everything. To me, not. If you don't have your health, you have no image. So to me, health is so, so important. And not to say that we can't care about ourselves. We want to buy clothes. We want a hairstyle. We want to do this and that. That's totally fine. But if it shifts to a pendulum that we lose or we disconnect, then I have some concerns. So learning to accept yourself, accept your body, celebrate yourself, celebrate your body. Make the most of your natural assets. We need to stop renovating our bodies and move in. And working with the students, really understanding, and that you just think of how much all of us, in particular this generation, how much they get from social media, what I call these external cues that are coming in, this bombardment. You should do this, you should look like this, you should wear this, you should do that. And helping the students, again with the therapist, to begin to filter through what's right for you. And so sometimes I would have the students write a letter to their mind and to their body to realize what they do. You know, I'm a mathematician, my God, my ability to do this calculation. My legs, I love my legs. I love to walk. It allows me to do this. Or I love my hands because I'm an artist. So really dialing in and appreciating your mind and your body. And as I mentioned, I'm not a big fan of the word diet. So I call it, did I eat today? And putting that word mindfully in. The class I taught, it's about fueling and feeding yourself, listening to your body, learning to love your body, and moving your body, as I call the joy of movement, joy of moving. Exercise, to another word, sometimes is a little harder than I like. So I like to say, how do we move our body? Some of the students, they're like, I don't like to sweat. I don't like to move. I don't want to go to the rec center. I don't feel comfortable being around people. So again, working with the team at Wardenburg, how can you move your body? Get up and dance. Garden if you want to. As Erin has mentioned, she has this great program that they're putting together and talking about what we have in Holder. It's this beautiful place that we can sit with nature. And some students, I don't exercise. I'm like, man, you are walking across campus. We have those great bikes if they want to bike from class to the next. And so finding ways that they really enjoy. You don't have to run a marathon. You don't have to go lift weights. How do you like to move your body? And as I mentioned, pause. I think that's key, is taking out that bit of time. And this is something I just put together. When we pause, it can bring possibilities. It can bring an awareness. We can get a better understanding, maybe what's going on for us. We can satiate ourselves and empower ourselves. So pause is huge. And this is my hunger tree. I love it. Meeting with the students, they help me put new words in. And I know this tree will continue to grow. I love it. As I said, I share it with my colleagues, I share it with my neighbors, I've shared it with the students. It's just something that helps resonate, because I think sometimes we don't honor that emotional hunger. And sometimes we're starving for that. That is key in kind of helping fuel ourselves physically. I'll just share 2 stories. One gentleman, came to the Nutrition Resource Center for a free consult. And he said, Kathleen, I've never had this kind of eating behavior, and I'm embarrassed to mention that I'm just eating uncontrollably at night. So we kind of talked and kind of said, well, tell me how long you've been at CU. He was new. He was a new graduate student. He's not hanging out with his guys. He's used to go getting brews. Who's going to a movie, laughing. He goes, Kathleen, I am not laughing. And I said, oh my gosh, you are hungry for laughter. And so we talked about resources, what he could do on campus and start making these connections. So that was really, I thought, wow, laughter, that's huge. He's hungry for that. So I added hunger. Another ad I had, hers was cake. She went to cake to have a slice of cake. And I said, what is it about cake? She goes, always there, Kathleen. It's the hard story because she was an incredible gal. It's always there. My friends aren't. I thought, wow. So I said, I think it's okay to have your cake. And I said, maybe we can take that cake and we can kind of think of consciousness, awareness, kindness, and power. And again, working. I said, I really think this would be an opportune time to work with a therapist. How do you get to be seen and to be heard by your friends, or finding people that you connect with? So the hunger tree to me is empowerment. I got it from a book called Eating in the Light of the Moon, which I read before, starting at Wardenberg. Beautiful stories. And one was about naming your hunger. And I love trees. Trees to me continue to read. So sorry about getting emotional there. It just holds a lot for me. And this is my guy, Zeus. Loves to be on the loose. And right there, that face is telling me, Mom, it's time for a super treat. This guy's timed. So anyway, thank you for letting me share what I got to share with the students and how much they taught me for the years, and be able to collaborate with my colleagues at Warden. So I hope that you continue to fuel yourself physically and also fuel yourself emotionally. Thank you.
Kathleen, thank you so much. Before we wrap up, we do have a little bit of time for maybe a little question and answer. And while we get started, maybe a reflection or two, what really stood out in Kathleen's message. Kathleen, to kick things off, I did get a question in the background. Wondering if you could explain a little bit more of the resources on campus for employees.
So as far as the Clinical Translational Research Center, I know we can offer, like if you want to have a bone mineral density. As far as nutrition wise, we haven't dialed into it that much, providing support. We can certainly do more physiological testings that are available, and I can send that out. As far as nutrition counseling, I'm not aware that we have that opened for employees. Yeah, I wish there was more for employees, because I think that is important, that we need to take care of our staff as well.
Well, more sessions like this.
Yes, we can open up more sessions. You and Erin, you and I can have conversations. If there's a time that, I could reintroduce the class that I did where I talked about fueling your body, listening to your body, loving your body, joy of movement. That's something I'm open to help as something that we could connect with and maybe provide that for faculty and staff, because I think that would be awesome.
Well, thank you so much for that kind offer, and we'll follow up. I just want to pause. We do have a little bit of time for question and answers. You're welcome to pop things in the chat. It looks like we do have some comments. Jenny says, I'm hungry now. Thank you, Kathleen, along with another few mentions of gratitude. Ashley Grice says, when speaking to normalizing eating beyond body image, how do additional factors or considerations like race, socioeconomic status, culture, oppression, etc., intersect with the approach for normalizing eating food resources, etc. Can you share any resources for staff that might help us with these considerations?
Can you say the last part of that, Erin? Can you
share any resources for staff that might help us with these considerations?
Opening a dialogue probably with Wardenberg, and we do have a group, Nutrition Buffs, which is centered for the students, but I do collaborate with Nicole Staub and Donna Louise and the dietitians. Maybe that's something we need to open up a dialogue to help with the resources, because that is loaded. You have to really dial into where that person's at. We do have resources for students. I don't know if it's open for faculty, but if there is a budget issue for getting food pantry and things like that. But that's a pretty loaded question, a good one. So send that to me and let me think about that a little bit more. So I apologize right now. I don't have that on my forefront, but thank you for the person that brought that up, because that is really a valuable question.
And we're getting some notes, and I'll save that question and send it to you later. And the buff pantry was mentioned, and a little gratitude for Ashley Grice, who asked the question as well. Want to be mindful of time. We do have just a few more minutes. If anyone has comments, questions, anything else they'd like to express. Okay. Well, before we sign off, I'd like to encourage all of our guests to apply your insights from today's session and bring wellness to life for you and your communities. Before concluding, I'd like to offer a big thank you to certainly Kathleen Farrell, the Be Well team, and the A&S Jedi team for their work supporting these offerings. And finally, a huge thank you to Kathleen Farrell for your incredible insights, highlighting the mind-body connection and the great work you do in service of our community. Please do check out both the Jedi websites and Be Well for our next offerings. And with that being said, I will encourage you to take a look at the chat, Kathleen, because there's a lot of love coming your way.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. All right, everyone. Hope to see you at our next offering. With that, I'll sign off for the group. Be well.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.